Good morning and welcome to Morning Movie News, where there's actually so much going on in Hollywood right now, I had to backburner 2 stories. And interestingly, all of these stories, even the ones I backburnered, have nothing to do with comic book movies. So it's nice to see that part of the industry, which can seem quite small these days, alive and well. So, which 3 stories made the cut? Well, I think you'll find them not only very interesting, but a diverse mix of what's going on right now in Hollywood. So the first one has to do with a franchise that's trying its best to compete with the comic book franchises out there right now, and I think it's doing a pretty good job, and that's the Fast and the Furious franchise. Now, of course, the 7th entry is racing towards us, Furious 7, and they recently released the trailer. And as I said in my trailer review, I think it's one of the best trailers I've ever seen. And as I would expect, Universal is apparently prepping an 8th installment. But a lot of interesting things have been revealed about this 8th installment, which we're going to discuss right now. Now, first of all, it's going to be 2 films actually shot back to back, which is of course the popular trend these days. It's cost effective and it allows for films to be released in close succession, usually a year apart. But the Fast and Furious movies turn around very quickly anyway, so I think they're probably going with this for the cost effective aspects of the formula. So they want to shoot 2 films back to back, so we're actually talking about Fast and Furious 8 and 9. But the other thing is that Universal says this will be the end of the franchise, which I think is a little too early to call. I know they're probably very nervous about seeing how this 7th film is received in light of Paul Walker's tragic death, but people are very positive about it. I think that if the film can handle it correctly, if they can send Paul Walker's character off into the depths of the Fast and Furious cinematic universe so that he's still there, or some people want to see him killed off, his character killed off, and out of respect to what happened to him in real life, maybe put an important message about the dangers of racing, considering he died in a car that's like the ones featured in the Fast and Furious films. That would also work out. But I don't think they need to bail out of this franchise. I think it has a life beyond maybe even 8 and 9. It's still going strong. The grosses have only been going up. So I would wait. I think it's premature to call an end to the franchise when they haven't seen how it's going to perform at the box office. But we'll see. We'll see what happens. They have every right to change their mind, of course, but I don't understand why they would make an announcement that the series is going to come to an end. I mean, still, there's 2 more movies left in the tank, right? So you might counter that point, but I can see this franchise going on for a very, very long time. But they're saying that this is going to be the end. Now, the other thing is that they're trying to get Justin Lin back into the game. Now, Justin Lin, of course, is the director, Asian director, one of the first Asian directors, part of this current trend. John Chu, James Wan, these guys are very successful, but Justin Lin was one of the first people to really get on the Hollywood's radar and succeed. And he did it with the Fast and Furious films, and I think he paved the way for Chu and Wan. So Justin Lin started off with the franchise, Better Luck Tomorrow. They liked what he did there, so he moved over to Fast and Furious and took over with Tokyo Drift. And he's really been in charge since then until he left for the 7th film, because I think he probably not only needed a break, very much like what Christopher Nolan said, I've been making these movies for so long, I'd like to do something else. And often they do tend to come back. We'll see what Christopher Nolan does in light of Interstellar's not as strong performance, or not stellar performance at the box office, even though I do think it's a very good film. But anyway, back to Justin Lin. He left not only because he wanted to do other things, but he didn't want to have to do the quick turnaround for Fast and Furious 7, or Furious 7 as it's now called. Now, of course, it ended up being a longer turnaround time because, again, of Paul Walker's death, but James Wan jumped on board because he could deliver the fast turnaround time. And it looked like an upgrade for him, not only in terms of his career, but the kind of movies that he was making, going from low-budget horror films to very high-budget action thrillers. But it looks like he's going back to low-budget horror films because he was wooed back to Conjuring 2 by New Line because, of course, he turned low-budget horror films into box office performers on the level of those big-budget actioners, which is quite an impressive feat. And I actually think he should have gone back to Conjuring 2, but I think that I'm surprised that James Wan wasn't like, well, can I do both? Can I find a way to make this work? I don't know why he would so quickly just abandon the franchise that he got in on. But maybe because of this quick turnaround, the very thing that gave him the opportunity in the first place is cut him out for the next installment of the Fast and Furious franchise. He can always go back to action after Conjuring 2, of course, but also he has a very lengthy deal over at Warner Brothers now with via New Line, so people are surmising he might make a comic book movie. And don't be surprised if he gets a DC movie if Fast and Furious 7 performs really well at the box office. So anyway, Justin Lin, they're like, okay, well, James Wan's back out. Justin Lin has an opening in his schedule because the Bourne movie he was supposed to make has been put on hold because they're focusing on a new Matt Damon James Bourne movie. So the Jeremy Renner one is, also been backburnered, like some stories on Morning Movie News today. So Universal says, hey, is Justin Lin available? Let's get him back in here to direct the final films of the franchise. And maybe that's why they're saying they're the last films of the franchise. Maybe this is all for Justin Lin's benefit to say, hey, don't you want to close out the franchise that made your career? And that seems like a pretty tempting offer when you think about it. But Justin Lin has so many other things he's supposed to be working on. He's doing the first 2 episodes of the new season of True Detective. And he's also, as you might recall, I reported that he's doing a big film in China, a Shaolin Temple remake that's supposed to be English language and, also I believe Mandarin or Chinese language to compete in both box office markets. So it's supposed to be one of the first big crossover films to come out of China that's supposed to perform really well here. And that's one of the reasons they brought Justin Lin on board because he is, of course, Asian heritage, with that angle, but also he's a big Hollywood talent and he's a name that American audiences know and love. Well, I don't know how well American audiences know Justin Lin's name. I'd be curious. Are you familiar with Justin Lin? He certainly doesn't. I certainly don't think he has the name recognition of James Wan. So anyway, that's what they're working on for Fast and Furious 8 and 9. I'm curious if you think this should be the end of the franchise, or do you think it can just drive on, even if Paul Walker can no longer enjoy the ride? So write your thoughts down below about that. Let's go into the second story, which was something very surprising that I came across late last night, and it's one of the big stories that bumped out another story, because I was like, I got to talk about this, because we're such big Dreamworks Animation fans, right? Well, Dreamworks Animation, as we've long discussed, has a horrible problem marketing their movies. They make these fantastic films that nobody goes and sees. How to Train Your Dragon is always saved by word of mouth, the second installment as well. It's still, I believe, the highest grossing animated movie of the year to date. We'll see if Big Hero 6 can threaten that. And also, ironically, Big Hero 6 borrows quite a bit from How to Train Your Dragon. But anyway, Dreamworks puts out wonderful films, Megamind, Monsters vs. Aliens. I loved all these movies, but they continuously have problems connecting with the audience. And Wall Street hasn't been too kind for that reason to their stock prices. So, as we've discussed, Dreamworks is trying to be purchased. They want to get out of the public sector and become a private company again, because they're sick and tired of Wall Street saying the sky is falling. Although I think sometimes Wall Street has, good reason to say that. But anyway, Dreamworks has, approached some financial institutions. They were talking to, I believe, China for some financing. All of those things seem to have fallen through, which is not a good sign for Dreamworks that nobody wants to purchase this. Is it a lemon? What are we not seeing from the movie-going perspective? What's in the books that's so bad? But it looks like they might have finally found a partner or someone to purchase them, and it's a very interesting decision. And this is that Hasbro might purchase Dreamworks Animation. That's a real shocker to me. This is just such an incredible deal, which on one hand has the chance to transform both businesses into something that can truly maybe start to contend with Disney's empire, or it could totally change both of them and make Dreamworks Animation just part of Hasbro. Like, are they going to be able to maintain their identity? Jeffrey Katzenberg, very strong personality. I have faith in him, but he's not getting results right now. I mean, I'm a big Jeffrey Katzenberg fan. I think he's a great visionary for the industry, beyond even animation and Hollywood itself. And I really respect that he just takes a dollar salary because he has rewards at the end of the year and stock benefits, etc. Although he's going to lose those stock benefits, of course, if they're no longer a public company. So what's the potential deal? Hasbro is going to purchase Dreamworks Animation, and Dreamworks Animation is apparently worth $1.9 billion, and Hasbro is worth $7.2 billion. Wow, a lot of money in the toy business, right? But also in the movie business. Hasbro, of course, has made no secret that they want to be in the movie business, and they've been moving into that space aggressively. Transformers, G.I. Joe, Battleship, the new Ouija movie, which has done surprisingly well, all from Hasbro. And they also have a Magic the Gathering movie in the works and a Candyland movie. And I even believe they're talking to someone about Monopoly. And then, of course, they just started Allspark Pictures, which we recently discussed, which they're going to finance their own lower budget movies and try and promote some of their girl-targeted toys like Gem and the Holograms and My Little Pony. And now it looks like they might have an animation studio to maybe get some properties out for their toy line. And is that the best use of Dreamworks Animation? Who knows? But I don't see Hasbro making this purchase without being able to order up an animated film based on one of their toy lines. And maybe that could work. The Lego movie is incredibly successful, and of course Disney does quite well with merchandising. There's been a lot of stories lately about how much money they're making off of Frozen from a consumer standpoint. Like, I think they've sold like 3 million Elsa dresses, Elsa and Anna, but I'm sure mostly Elsa, this year alone, just in North America, I believe. And that's an incredible number. So if Dreamworks Animation were to partner with Hasbro, that's what they would get out of it. Hasbro would get an animation studio, but DreamWorks would get products. They could maybe see a DreamWorks animation store, like there's a Disney store. There'd be much more in the Toys R Us space, etc., the Walmart space, wherever people buy toys these days. Very interesting indeed. But then I saw some articles saying that maybe DreamWorks Animation would be able to move into live action with this deal, or television, which seems really weird to me because I believe DreamWorks still exists as well over with Steven Spielberg. You know, they split the companies, and DreamWorks is making live action movies, or at least trying to. You know, The Fifth Estate was one of theirs and not doing very well. But to have DreamWorks Animation move into the live action space seems repetitive and something that I think that Katzenberg's old partner, Steven Spielberg, I don't know how much David Geffen is still involved in this, would be like, what are you doing? I kept the live action division, get out of here. So we'll see. I think it's a very, very interesting situation. It's a really potentially game changer of a deal, but I hope that DreamWorks Animation's identity doesn't get lost in the mix. But I'm very curious to what you think of this. Are you like, oh boy, this is the best idea ever. This is going to save DreamWorks Animation, and I'm going to get all my favorite Hasbro toys as animated movies. I mean, how about a My Little Pony movie from DreamWorks Animation, huh? That could actually be pretty good now that I think about it. If they want to move into the digital animation space, because Hasbro's films up to now are 2D animation. But it's a really crazy mix, and we'll just see how it comes out the other end. And if I were Disney, I would definitely be keeping tabs on this deal to see what emerged. Would it be a true competitor that I have to be a little nervous about? Because no one can touch Disney when it comes to horizontal integration right now. There's vertical integration where you control one particular space, one part of the industry, but every level of it. And then there's horizontal integration where you cover different categories, in somewhat in the same space. So it's interesting, very interesting distinction, and I think DreamWorks wants to go horizontal. All right, so the third story of the day, and this is just kind of the story that when you see it, you just can't believe it, and it's something we discussed quite a bit on Beyond the Trailer, and that's diversity and whitewashing. And this is some whitewashing like you wouldn't believe. We just got finished talking about Exodus, and the last trailer came out, and I'm sure a number of you are like, I'm on the fence. It looks like a good movie. But how am I supposed to support a movie that so blatantly whitewashes major roles? John Turturro, Sigourney Weaver, even Ramses and Moses, all white actors. But I'm sure that some of you are like, well, you know what? Should I really take a stand on this? Why should I miss out on a great movie, etc., etc.? Well, if you don't take a stand now, when will you take a stand? Because, I'm going to review it, but with this news story, I'd be very tempted to be like, you know what, I'm just going to skip it. Because wait till you hear what Fox is developing. So Fox has seen all the success with Guardians of the Galaxy and Pirates of the Caribbean. And they go, wow, people really like funny adventure movies. So why don't we do Alibaba and the 40 Thieves? That's a great story. It has great name recognition. It invokes really strong feelings and an idea of adventure. Let's make that movie. All right, so you obviously know where I'm going with this. But they want to call it 40 Thieves, and they want to have Alibaba just be kind of like the name of a character actually named Alan. And Alan, they're testing these actors for the role. Liam Hemsworth, Dan Stevens from Downton Abbey, and you'll understand why Dan Stevens is in the mix in a moment, and Evan Peters, a.k.a. Quicksilver from X-Men Days of Future Past. Now, if I had to pick somebody to star in a quirky action movie out of those three people, I'd pick Evan Peters. He was very good as Quicksilver. But I wouldn't pick him to star in Alibaba and the 40 Thieves, even if you just call it 40 Thieves. Maybe it won't even take place in the Middle East. But the idea is, if you're going to capitalize on everything that goes along with Alibaba and the 40 Thieves, how can you not have have the action take place there? If it's just called 40 Thieves and it takes place in, I don't know, Canada, I'm trying to think of the furthest thing I can from the Middle East, who's going to then how are they going to capitalize on the mystique of the brand recognition, so to speak, if fairy tales can have a brand of Alibaba and the 40 Thieves? It makes no sense whatsoever. I'm just really surprised that the Fox executives would sit down and think this was a good idea. However, maybe they're right, because I was pretty upset that Prince of Persia featured Jake Gyllenhaal in the lead role, saying that should have gone to a Bollywood actor or a Middle Eastern actor, and everybody at that time, as you might recall, if you were watching Beyond the Trailer then, thought that was ridiculous, and I took quite a bit of heat for that. But I still feel very strongly about this. And if you want to make sure that you can bring in people, just remember that most ethnicities watch movies that are almost entirely white most of the time. So if you can't go watch Alibaba and the 40 Thieves, why the hell not? I'm sorry. I get so upset about this. But if you want to bring some diversity in, just think back to Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves, the old Kevin Costner movie. They brought in Morgan Freeman's character, and he was Kevin Costner's right-hand man. So why not bring in a white character to be Alibaba's right-hand man? try and bring in some diversity, like reverse diversity there, and then still maintain the integrity of Alibaba and the 40 Thieves. I think it would work quite well. Could be an older character, maybe a professor, somebody that Alibaba works with. Someone who hires Alibaba, as a guide, and then Alibaba, because, just that kind of setting of the Middle East. I think you could come up with some really interesting ideas, but not have Alibaba actually be named Alan, and he calls himself Alibaba. I mean, I know Aladdin in the animated movie was voiced by a white actor. All the actors actually were white in that, but at least, on screen, they were the correct ethnicity for the story. I just think this is just a crazy idea, and it's particularly annoying because I think Alibaba and the 40 Thieves is a great idea for a movie. And Hollywood has made so many swashbuckler picks at this point, but what would make it refreshing is the diversity, that it did take place in the Middle East, and it was kind of like a live-action Aladdin. I think that would be very exciting and could potentially do quite well. But then again, it's just another really unfortunate movie, and it's getting to the point where you're like, well, hey, if you're not a white, if you're a guy and you want to be an actor and you're not white, why do you want to be an actor? There's no roles for you, and there never will be. And it's a real shame from the audience perspective because you're supporting movies that have mostly white casts, but nobody's willing to support movies that feature mostly your ethnicity. It's just really unfortunate. I would love to see an Alibaba and the 40 Thieves movie done correctly. Although I don't know if Sean Levy could do it. He's the director they've put on this. He, of course, has been very successful for Fox with Night at the Museum. He's doing the third entry coming up. Dan Stevens is in that, so I think that's why he's in the mix here. And Sean Levy tried to be, a little more highbrow with This Is Where I Leave You. Didn't work out, so he's going back hardcore into the action-adventure franchise area. He did Date Night. I liked Date Night. I thought that was pretty good. Real Steel, also pretty good. He makes a lot of movies that are, I think, pretty good, but I don't trust him to deliver something on the level of Guardians of the Galaxy or Pirates of the Caribbean. So we'll see, but I just really wish this was cast correctly. But I'm curious to how you feel. Is this still like The Prince of Persia? Do you not care? Or do you care? And what do you think about whitewashing? What's it going to take to end it in Hollywood? Will it ever end? Because for everyone who wants to make a stand, there's always people who are like, you know what, not today, I want to just go and enjoy this movie. So it really is a genuine problem. All right, so we're just going to, bite down the bullet on some activist stuff here today. This is going to be about something that Cindy asked me about, and I think you might be surprised with my answer on this one now. Cindy asked me a question via Twitter, and she said, "Hi Grace, could you talk about the Bath Film Festival," that's out in the UK, I believe, adding an F as a rating for feminist movies? I don't know how to feel about it, and I'd really like to hear your thoughts. This is, I think, a situation many women find themselves in, where we're like, oh, yay, progress, but boo, being singled out and having to go kind of play like in my own little special area. I just want to be part of the group. You might notice that's a theme whenever I'm talking about women in film these days, either on camera or off. Just want to be part of the group. I don't need my own little special play area where, I can not feel threatened. So anyway, let me set up the idea for you here. It's called the new F rating, and this is what the festival writes about it themselves. They're actually quite proud of themselves. They've gotten a ton of publicity for this, and maybe that was the idea all along, but this is how they describe it. The Bath Film Festival says, the new F rating at this year's Bath Film Festival is awarded to films with a significant female crew, especially directors and screenwriters. Films which feature women who are not just on screen to boost the male lead, and films which address women's issues. And we intentionally picked F for feminist. And they said we were inspired by the A rating in some Swedish cinemas for films that passed the Bechdel test. And the Bechdel test, or Bechdel test, is one of those words you read more than you hear. But that's, of course, based on a famous comic strip where a female cartoonist said that the 3 rules for a movie that she wants to see are, 1, it has to have at least 2 women in it. They must talk to each other, that's the second rule, and it has to be about something besides a man. I think that's a pretty good system. You would think that more movies would pass that than they do. I think that's the most shocking thing about the Bechdel test, how few films pass it. And also, a lot of films pass it that seem like they're very progressive, like, for instance, Gravity can't pass the Bechdel test. So maybe there's one female astronaut, maybe they exchange some words, but basically it doesn't pass. So, and a lot of people feel, I didn't like Gravity actually, by the way, as you might recall, but I think it's still nice that it's out there, and it's still a step forward for women in film in general. But anyway, I think the F rating is a problem. I think it's bad to call light to the feminist angle of it. I think it's the same problem I had with the female director for a Wonder Woman movie, although it looks like Michelle McLaren's going to get that gig. I'm glad she's getting it, but I'm sure Michelle McLaren's like, damn it, I wish I could direct a movie that was just a movie and that it wasn't some political statement for, Warner Brothers. But we'll see what happens. Hopefully she just does a good job. Although good luck with that supposed 1920 setting she's saddled with. Maybe no guy director wanted it. They're like, I do not want to touch this with a 10-foot pole. And she's like, I just want to get into movies, so I'll take it. I mean, there's often so many other things at play besides women's rights. and I think that that should be respected. I don't think Michelle MacLaren's just sitting there being like, ah, finally, I get to direct the Wonder Woman movie. How wonderful for me as a woman. I don't think that's how it goes. I think there are a lot of other business aspects at play because Michelle MacLaren seems to me like a pretty normal person who just wants to be successful in her job. And so I don't like the F rating. I don't think, for the reason I don't like it being separatist. I don't like them being like, okay, women's movies are over here. I don't like that it seems to not be inclusive to male viewers. I think women would not be happy, any female actress or screenwriter or director or any female crew member, if she felt men didn't want to see her movie, that no one wants to make movies just for their demographic. It's ridiculous. I mean, look at, we just talked about a bunch of Asian directors. They're making movies for everybody. They're not just making movies for the Asian demographic. It's the same thing should be for women. And no one's really talking about their ethnicity either, are they? But yet, for some reason, we have a lot of discussion about what kind of movies are women making and, you know, what, et cetera, and they have to make a movie about women's issues. I don't think that's good. And the other thing is, so besides the separating it and the, you know, excluding male viewers, the best thing for women is if you can't tell that they made the movie. You shouldn't be able to watch a movie or a television show and guess the gender of who created it. I think the best thing is when it's just good, when the story stands on its own. So to label it and be like, hey, this is a woman's movie, this was made by women, for women, celebrating women, it's just like, you know, it takes away from the quality of the project. It's almost like saying, well, hey, like for instance, Wild, I believe, is a movie at the festival that got this rating, and that's the Reese Witherspoon, I'm going to backpack on my own movie. That's almost like saying, look, we know that nobody wants to watch Wild because it's about a woman and discussing women's issues. But if we put an F on it for feminist, we're going to guilt everybody into watching it because you kind of really have to watch it. And I think that's what's the problem there. Let these movies stand on their own, and no one should get a crutch, not even women filmmakers or actresses or screenwriters. Your product should stand on its own, and your only goal should be make people see it, think it's good, and then earn money at the box office. That's how women are going to do well. And that's how Catherine Bigelow did well. That's how she won the Oscar. She didn't pay any attention to her gender. She just tried to make the best movie possible. And, you know, she rode a little bit of a wave of, you know, feminism at the end there for the Oscar, but that's how she even got in that place to begin with. So that's my thoughts on that. I'm curious to what you think, Cindy, now that you've had some time to think about it. Please write your thoughts down below. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in today. Please write down below what you think of today's top 3 stories and the viewer question, anything you'd like to see covered tomorrow, any questions that you might have. And stay tuned for those 2 backburnered stories either tomorrow or I'll definitely fit them in by Monday. They're good, too. All right, thanks for watching. Bye.